Smith, staff to the committee. Proposed substitute House Bill 2279, which is H Draft 3511.1, deals with the availability of information and materials for independent repair of digital electronic products. A digital electronic product, as defined under the bill, is a part or machine containing a microprocessor and a flat panel computer monitor. The bill would require an original manufacturer of a digital electronic product to make available to the product owner or independent repairer the following repair-related information and materials: the same diagnostic and repair information that is provided to authorized repairers, and equipment, service parts, and diagnostic repair tools for purchase on fair and reasonable terms. Manufacturers would be prohibited in certain circumstances from requiring the purchase of repair-related documentation in a proprietary format, from designing or manufacturing products to prevent reasonable diagnostics or repair, and from excluding certain information necessary to reset a security-related function. The provisions do not apply to manufacturers, products, services, or dealers of the following: motor vehicles, non-road engines, equipment, or vehicles, or stationary engines, equipment, or vehicles. A violation of the Act would be enforceable under the Consumer Protection Act and subject to a civil penalty of $500. Just to compare the proposed substitute before you and the original underlying bill, the proposed substitute would add the exemption for non-road engines, equipment, vehicles, and stationary engines, equipment, and vehicles. A preliminary fiscal note is now available, and that concludes my remarks. Be happy to take questions.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to do very brief prime sponsor comments. You know, the way the process is supposed to work is I got called by a constituent, it actually might have been an email, asking to meet with me. We met at Woods Coffee in Bellingham, Washington. He owns a business that does repair of smartphones and small electronics. Expressed to me some concern that he's seeing with some of the manufacturers making it so that you can't repair the products, gluing the batteries in so you can't replace the batteries when they wear out. Some of the newer phones you know, could potentially detect when a replacement screen is not an authorized screen and disable the entire phone. And so in hearing this, you know, one of the big access points, I think, for folks that can't afford the newest technology when it comes out every 2 to 3 years, and I want to emphasize that 2 to 3 year window, and we're kind of Moore's Law has taken us in that space, is the secondary phone market is the access point, being able to repair these phones. We have a recycling program that you have to take these products to in the state and recycle them, so to diverting them from that waste stream. Made a lot of sense. The exemption and the substitute, we thought we had taken out a lot of longer-term durable goods, automobiles, and farm equipment, and we missed the farm equipment, so the substitute takes farm equipment out. I see a lot of old tractors around my district, so I'm not sure there's a shortage of old farm equipment anywhere in the state, or old cars for that matter. But you know, so I'm trying to get out of this things that aren't a short-term durable good where the processors are changing constantly. And I'm not going to get, this doesn't really get into some of the issues around, you know, you've heard of the California lawsuit about the battery issue with the iPhone 6s. Even though I keep saying every time a new phone comes out, my old phone seems to run slower than it did before. This doesn't cover that, just the right to repair cracked screens, batteries that have gone bad, and who can do that type of repair. I want to get to the testimony, but I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has, because we've got quite a few folks that would like to testify. All right, seeing no questions, I'm going to go through and capture out-of-town people first. We're going to set the timer for 3 minutes. I'm not sure why that says 3:18 on it. All right, there we go. For 3 minutes, the way the system works, when you're on, it turns green. When you have 30 seconds left, it turns to yellow, and then if it turns to red, if you can wrap up as quickly as possible without abusing our generosity on it, would be greatly appreciated. So I'm going to call people in order from the folks who are from out of town and aren't hired to be here. First up, we have Brian Engelhard, Daniel Bartholomew, and Eric Wareham. If you could come up to the dais, please. And you're not, I'm just calling people in order from out of town first, and we'll come back through and get folks who stay with us during the entire session. So you'll have 3 minutes when we start the green light. We'll start with Mr. Engelhard. Please proceed. Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you very much for taking your time out to listen to us. So I own a small independent repair store in Portland, Oregon, and drove up to visit with you guys to chat a little bit about some of the things we face and the chairman brought up his his phone runs slow. He seems like when the phone's new, and Apple released that they actually slow down the software in your phone when your battery gets below a certain percent. So when it wears out, they didn't tell us what that number is, so we're kind of guessing. But right now, I looked up when I walked in this room. If you want to get your phone fixed from Apple, you can't get it done in the next 7 days within 147 miles of this location. So the ability for an independent repair store to have an Apple battery, which there are tons within 5 miles of this location, you could walk into today, meet a very nice person, and get your phone fixed. Now, the contrary to this is Apple will tell you, or I'm sure they're high-paid people or very well-dressed people behind me will tell you that I'm not very smart, which is true. My wife will come behind them and say, you know, he has his moments some days. But the reality is, we're smart enough to be able to know how to do this. If Apple can hire an 18-year-old kid to fix your battery, an independent store can find qualified people to do it also. I'm not going to hurt myself. I have all my fingers still. I was born deaf in one ear, wife deaf in the other ear, but we do okay. We offer a great service for the consumer to give them an alternative. I'll wrap up quickly before the lights change with a brief story of a customer of mine, a school district. We know how schools get their money. They come from things that we do. They had 20 computers that just stopped working, 20 iMacs, just stopped. Apple told them they must be replaced. They're totally dead. I was talking with this adjudicator at the school district who runs the IT department, and I said, what is this giant pile of iMacs doing here? And she said, well, Apple told us they're all bad. It'd be $1,000 or more, $1,000 to $1,200 to fix them, and it's $1,500 to replace them. We upgraded. We ended up spending $2,000 a computer. So we don't know what to do with these. So I took those. I said, can I take one, just see? I'm curious. Because they didn't open it. You can see, as unintelligent as I am, we could see they didn't open it. So we took it back to the shop, and we had our technician open it up. And inside this computer, what we found out was wrong with it was a $1.75 CR2032 battery had died. So I had a school district down the street from me that bought 20 new $2,000 computers because Apple didn't open it. Their intelligent people, their technicians, told them that it's completely irreplaceable. And in 2 hours, my less than smart people by their regard could open it up safely, diagnose that it was a battery, and it could have been fixed for a couple $100 as opposed to a couple $1,000. So that's the importance of this bill, is to give you options if your phone's running slow, which we know is a fact now, and to give other people options if they don't want to go to Apple or wait a week or live close. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. And we're going to hold questions to all three people, or all the people at the dais testify today. So Mr. Bartholomew, please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. 39% of rural America is not connected to the internet. 18% of America in general is not connected to the internet. That's millions of people that cannot communicate with their schools. They cannot write term papers and get them submitted. They cannot communicate with people that are far-flung, their families that are far-flung, or they can't contribute to the curing of cancer or cleaning our water systems. All of that begins with a device. FreeGeek is a nonprofit refurbisher. And what we do is we take in donations from individuals, corporations, and schools. We refurbish what we bring in, and we put it back out into the community. We contribute to the establishment of 6 to 8 nonprofits every single week, and we take care of lots and lots of students, lots and lots of people. Kayla was a junior high schooler who came to FreeGeek, and she donated her time. She donated 24 hours, which is what it requires. And at the end of 24 hours, we gave her a computer, and she started to cry. She had been doing all of her term papers on her phone. Not only that, but she had to sit outside of her school in order to get Wi-Fi access. So she would sit outside in order to get an A with her phone and submit a term paper. This bill will enable us to get the schematics that we need to repair things. We don't have to reverse engineer in order to figure out how to go forward. My people are extremely qualified. I have 42 dedicated employees, and I have between 100 and 150 volunteers that come in every day. and we repair computers, and we repair devices, we repair iPads. We do it every single day. Last year, we put out 42,000 devices back out into the community. Please help us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Wareham, you're up next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Eric Wareham. I represent Western Equipment Dealers Association. We represent over 66 farm equipment dealerships in the state of Washington. We oppose this bill as it was originally written. We haven't seen the amendments yet, Mr. Chairman. But as you mentioned, there are amendments there to exempt non-road equipment, which I'm assuming would include not only farm equipment but also industrial or construction equipment. If that is indeed the case, then we would remove our opposition, and we look forward to working with you on those amendments and look forward to seeing them.
Great, thank you. And we appreciate your input and contact and coming up from Kansas City for the hearing today. So thank you. Questions for any of the three? Oh, Representative Young.
Well, I'd really like to hear you articulate a little bit more about your opposition to something that's really an American tradition in my mind. Helping kids develop the ability to look under a hood and tinker is the spirit of American innovation. Is it proprietary information you're really looking at that you think that we're going to start to give up, or is it just a matter of you kind of got a monopoly that really says you can't open the hood anymore when it comes to anything IT?
Representative Young, thanks for the question. No, I think the description of the bill is a misnomer. It's, disputational semantics about the right to repair, that we're infringing some right, when in fact, under the DMCA, the Librarian of Congress has ruled that farmers in particular have a right to circumvent technology protection measures, in a lot of instances to perform repairs. Our slogan is really that you have the right to repair, not to modify. Modify meaning to violate sometimes emission standards or safety standards and exceed those safety standards when you're performing repairs on equipment. We don't intend at all with our opposition to the original bill to prevent farmers from changing the oil or performing maintenance on their equipment. But there's simply other things involved in the bill, such as embedded code that is proprietary, as you mentioned, and I think those are concerns for not only the equipment dealers but also the manufacturers.
Go ahead.
So, I work in the IT field, so I tend to visualize these things in terms of scenarios that the average American would tend to look at it. So code isn't scary to me. I see code all day in my life, and it's really nothing more than when I was working under my Impala's hood and working on a carburetor or trying to juice something up with it, and that's really what led to innovation. So I'm just kind of curious, what would be the opposition to some farmer tinkering with something that all of a sudden you'd be able to take and make even better and make a bigger profit off of it?
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question there. Is it about where they can access code or the proprietary information?
The biggest gains in IT have come from people that have open sourced their code, that have allowed other people to come tinker with it and create new innovation that then other companies that are more established end up taking and rocketing it up because they've got the financial wherewithal to do it. But when you stifle that, you really get a corporate dominated scenario that says, based off of budgets, you can only develop one way, and you prohibit any American innovation to really come into the field. Which is really what happened if you think about back in the 1950s, the 1960s, when people really started to get into the hoods of the cars. Look at what innovations we really had. I believe it's one of the things that really stifles our ability to see innovation in green energy or any type of thing, because we've really stifled the ability for the average American to get in and show us their brilliance that maybe they don't have a degree to articulate on paper.
So I'm just going to, because of time, Mr. Ware is a professional that represents the folks all year round, so we can have a dialogue about this offline if we could, if that's okay.
Certainly, and I'd be happy to, Representative Young. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Representative Young, and not trying to take anything away from the point you were making, but I need to keep going too. So thank you all three for your testimony here today. I'm going through again the list of people who marked they were out of town. Next up, we have Scott Barker and Brad Dow. And that's all the folks that said they were out of town. Now I'm going back up to Tom McBride from Olympia. If you could all come up. And if Mr. Barker, could please proceed? Start when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Scott Barker. I'm the General Manager of 3R Technology in Seattle, here to talk in support of HB 2279, the Right to Repair Bill. We are an electronics recycler in the Seattle area, and most of what my reasoning for speaking to this bill is that I kind of see the other side of it. If things are not allowed to be repaired, then they end up in my hands, which basically means that they're going to be torn apart into their component parts, sent somewhere in the country to be shredded up and to be built back into new products. So the more that we can keep things out of my hands, basically, the better we are. The biggest part of the recycle side, the 3 R's of recycling, is reuse. We focus very much on reuse, but some of this inability to repair things really works against us in that case. One of the major issues for us is we deal with corporate clients and with data destruction. We are currently running into more and more products that basically to pull out a hard drive to shred it as it is required by our corporate clients, we have to basically destroy the product because we are not allowed to we don't have the tools, we don't have the knowledge, we don't have things that make us able to tear it apart in such a way that we could put a new hard drive in it and make it readily available to be resold. Again, I am speaking very much in support of HB 2279, mostly to keep things as much as we can out of my hands. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Great, thank you. And we'll hold questions till the end. Mr. Dow, please proceed.
Yeah, hi, my name is Brad Dow from Dow Computers. I'm an independent IT products and services provider, predominantly the Fortune 1000 sized accounts, mainly in Washington State. And I buy and sell, lease, perform various services for those Fortune 500 accounts. And those of us who are independent of any one manufacturer find ourselves in a turf war with them perpetually because of the proprietary nature, as you were talking to this gentleman about. The situation, or the ammunition that manufacturers generally have is that they have hardware, software, and services and / warranty. And 2 out of 3 of those certainly are not proprietary. Hardware anybody can fix, as my predecessor here told you about the iPhones. In terms of service, anybody can provide that. There's a mistaken thought process that those who are laid off from IBM and HP and Storage Tech and Oracle somehow walk off into the sunset and don't do anything. No, they start working for guys like me, third parties. So we have people that are 30 years IBM trained in the industry. They can maintain the biggest mainframe to the smallest PC and everything in between. And we primarily, we compete against manufacturers. And the reason that we're in existence is because we give Fortune 1000 sized accounts, as well as consumers, the option to go to somebody other than a manufacturer. It's competition. And just from an American standpoint, going to your tinkering comment before, part of the innovation is stifling competition is not a good thing for America. And in my opinion, that's exactly what the manufacturers do. And if I'm obviously pro this specific bill and would welcome any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. McBride, please proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tom McBride, appearing before you today on behalf of CompTIA. CompTIA is the Computing Technology Industry Association. It's composed of more than 2,000 members and 3,000 academic and training partners and tens of thousands of registered users. CompTIA has become a leading voice for the technology ecosystem, and we appreciate the opportunity to present to you today. I come before you on behalf of CompTIA opposed to House Bill 2279. What I'd like to do first is alert you to a letter that I've provided to you. It has some logos on the top of organizations that share our concerns and opposition to the bill. I'll tick through a few points quickly here. Generally, CompTIA is concerned that the legislation, if passed, would lead to unintended consequences to the operation, security, and safety of digital electronic products sold in Washington State. And just to highlight a few items in the bill, in Section 3, subsection 1, sub A, the bill provides, the crux of the bill provides that electronic product manufacturers are being required to make available the same diagnostic and repair information, software, tools, and parts to independent repair providers, or the owner, as it is made to authorized repair providers. So the first issue is intellectual property. Many high-tech diagnostic software and other tools provide access to the entire device, including software, data, and other files. And the manufacturers make significant investments in the development of these products and services, and the protection of intellectual property is a legitimate and important aspect of sustaining the health of the innovative technology industry. The access mandated in the bill may put at risk the intellectual property the manufacturers have invested in and developed. Privacy and security is also a concern. Manufacturers want to ensure that their products are serviced by properly trained and vetted repair professionals that have the necessary skills to safely and reliably repair those electronic products. It may not always be the most convenient, but this approach is critical to maintain strong privacy and security features of various electronic devices. Industrial equipment, home appliances, smartphones, computers, servers, consumer electronics, and other connected devices would be a greater risk of hacking if this bill were to pass. A couple other issues to highlight. Section 4, sub 1, the bill attempts to define and safeguard trade secrets, but we do remain concerned that this exemption doesn't cover our concerns. And then in section 3, subsection 6, there are mandated design requirements, which is different than any other bill format we've seen around the country. This is very aggressive and unusual. We do appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today and present our concerns. We're happy to keep talking, but we do come before you asking that you not move this bill through committee.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, thank you all three for your testimony here today. Next up, we have Elise Orlick, Joni Deutsch, and Bob Battles. Please proceed when you're ready.
All right, thank you, Chair Morris and members of the committee for the chance to speak about the Fair Repair Act. My name is Elise Orlick. I'm a Seattle resident and the director of WashPerg, a statewide nonprofit, nonpartisan, grassroots member-based advocacy organization. We represent thousands of members across the state, and I'm here today to testify in favor of the Fair Repair Act. We think of it as the Just Let Us Fix Our Own Stuff Act. We are generating way too much waste, and companies use their power in the marketplace to make things harder to repair, leading to further waste. So we've mentioned a couple times the recent headlines of Apple giving us a recent example why this legislation is so important. In their attempt to prolong battery life, Apple has used a software update that throttles processors in older phones, causing noticeable slowdowns. I've noticed them. I know some of you have as well. In response to the public blowback, they have offered a discounted battery replacement, but those replacements have large wait lists and are only available from official Apple stores. Many people don't live close enough to those retailers to get the discounted part. If third-party repair shops could replace your battery, then this would make it easier on everyone, but they aren't given the chance to do so because they don't have a chance to use original parts and a few other barriers that this bill addresses. We could make it easier, cheaper, and more convenient to replace the batteries with reforms in this bill. And there would be more opportunities for small businesses like the ones we've heard from today to offer repair services. There would be more opportunities for electronics to have a second life after the first owner moves on to a newer device if older products were easier to refurbish. There are products in every home in this state, not just cell phones, which these fair repair reforms would make easier to repair. Some companies design products to be difficult to repair, such as gluing the battery into the smartphone, and we're glad to see that specifically called out in this legislation. those types of practices increase waste in a way that is needless. According to a study on e-waste by the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economy Opportunity, 80% of the life cycle energy use of consumer electronics is in manufacturing. Only 20% of the energy use is in terms of powering and recharging while you own the product. So if we substantially reduce the negative environmental impacts of consumer electronics by lifening their use in their lifetime, we could have a large environmental impact here. So thank you again for the opportunity to comment on this legislation.
Questions to Leanne. Ms. Deutsch, please proceed.
Sure. Good morning, Chair Morris, members of the committee. Joe Deutsch, Executive Director for the Northwest for TechNet. TechNet represents over 70 of the nation's leading companies in the fields of information technology, e-commerce, the sharing and gig economies, advanced energy, cybersecurity, venture capital, and finance. Cyber attacks have become a major threat to our modern technology-driven economy. And while policymakers, including many members of this committee, have focused on ways to bolster our nation's cyber defenses, this legislation would do just the opposite by forcing technology manufacturers to reveal intellectual property about their devices. While the legislation is being portrayed as a way for consumers to offer more options for fixing digital devices on their own, the underlying details would place Washington residents in the crosshairs of hackers. In effect, the legislation requires technology manufacturers to make their devices' software, repair tools, and diagnostic information publicly available. Forcing technology companies to open up intellectual property to the public would create massive security vulnerabilities and put consumers at increased risk of being hacked. Put simply, the bill would provide cyber criminals with access to sensitive technical information about the devices and networks they are targeting to hack. Not only would this legislation expose our devices to increased cyber security risks, it would also have a stifling effect on research and development in the technology industry, which is one of the main drivers of our state's booming innovation sector. Technology companies invest heavily in the development of new and innovative products, and the protection of intellectual property is critical to those efforts. This bill would compromise intellectual property that technology companies have invested in making by making public previously protected technical information. Sorry, tongue twister. This legislation has not been successful in any other state in the country where it's been introduced, and would, if passed, make Washington a lone wolf in matters of protecting public and private privacy and property. For these reasons and more, we would urge you to stand up for the security of your constituents and their devices and not move the bill any further. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Battles, please proceed.
Thank you. Bob Battles, Association of Washington Business. We are the state chamber. We also are the State Manufacturing Association. We represent more than 7,000 businesses who have over 750,000 employees, and more than 60% of those have fewer than 10 employees. I would like to echo kind of what Ms. Deutsch said and not repeat that on the interest of time. But, you know, again, we do believe that the bill threatens the consumer safety and security of the device. We also believe that the mandate would require disclosure of proprietary information. And we also, one of the things I want to say about when manufacturing and why this was a concern even for all manufacturing is manufacturing, this is going to limit and affect manufacturing as a whole through the tech industry, but it also has the potential for going across and all the things. Manufacturing, as we have having handed out a fact sheet just on manufacturing in the state of Washington, is one of the highest multipliers when it comes to having other jobs. And if we affect the manufacturing in this state, we reduce more than just the job itself that it takes away. For every one manufacturing job, there are 3 jobs produced outside of that. And so we have a concern that this could result in the loss of jobs just by having this bill go forward based on what we believe it's going to affect in dealing with these issues. In addition, we want to talk about that this has a potential for what could be a violation of the Dormant Commerce Clause under the U.S. Constitution. There is a requirement to not interfere with interstate commerce, and if this is the only bill in the state that's passed, it could affect the use of this product in interstate commerce and as it goes throughout other commerces, and so we need to think about that. Is there a federal issue on this as well? Thank you.
Great. We have several questions, actually, and Ms. Deutsch, your comment, maybe we start referring to this as the committee Stark, and being a lone wolf that the North always remembers. We have Representative Steele, Representative Smith, Representative Young, and Representative Tarleton. Let's try to keep concise questions. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm confused here a little bit. The folks that we're talking about as it relates to cybersecurity, what's prohibiting those individuals who wish malicious intent from already going down that road? As far as I understand, what we're talking about is replacing basic equipment that a small business owner who has a reputation within a community to maintain would be handling. So I guess, can you walk me down the differences between cybersecurity and battery replacement? I'm having a hard time understanding.
Sure. I think what it is, when you're looking at opening up like it's the intellectual property, and a lot of these companies want to make sure that the products that they do produce are protected from cyber attacks or are made stronger. And so as you go through the different versions and variations, they want to make sure that the people that are servicing these products are aware and are able to keep that up to that certain standard. So there are, as was alluded to previously, repair facilities that are authorized through these companies because they've gone through sort of that training and that requirement to be able to meet that level that the companies would provide for or would require for their products to be serviced.
Thank you, Representative Smith.
Thank you. For the representative from Washington, I just wanted to thank you. We've done some work in this committee on the issue of recycling the components of these products because it has such a worldwide impact, and I would love to continue that discussion with you. And for our other two, one of the previous testimonies talked about the fact that you have hardware, you have software, and you have services, and they're inviting you to a discussion. Where is it appropriate, if not in the software space? We take very seriously the cybersecurity and privacy of our constituents, as you have seen in multiple bills here. A number of them you have opposed. So where do you see the discussion happening as it relates to hardware, as it relates to servicing these products?
I would say that from my standpoint, and from me as being a representative of my association, I would definitely be open to the sitting at the table and to having those discussions. When it comes to this particular piece of legislation, it's something that as an association with our membership, this policy itself is something that they would oppose. However, that doesn't mean that it precludes me from being at the table to have discussions on what we could possibly do moving forward.
Yeah, I guess I would echo that as a state manufacturing association. We always encourage the development in the entrepreneurial spirit of finding new opportunities for employment and bringing in new employees. So again, but I think it's a discussion that needs to be had, but not a legislation that needs to be had.
Thank you, Representative Young.
Thank you, Chair Morris. Well, I guess I have three questions. The first two are kind of redundant, but I mean, would you consider Thomas Edison and Benjamin Franklin hackers? I mean, because if they're hackers, they were pretty good for the country. And second, I would say, you're saying that you're worried that letting the average individual look under the hood is going to cause a problem. Yet, I mean, are you expecting us to believe that your competitors that have multi-billion-dollar budgets don't do the same thing to every phone that one of your providers produces anyways? I mean, so you have this problem anyways, and maybe the general public doesn't know it, but your competitors have all the money in the world to go unscrew those phones and reverse engineer what you're doing, so why not open it up to American innovation?
I guess the question is that there's investment put into any kind of product, and when folks put in almost your R&D, your development, there's a right to be able to work to try to recoup some of that cost. And what you're saying is that for everyone not to allow them to recoup that cost, but and also there's also the requirement to make sure we, as a developer of a particular product, have to ensure that product is in some way meets the requirements and the minimum standards that are expected from the public. And when we allow just anybody to open it up, and now through this legislation would allow it to be done Right now what you were talking about is not allowed, and people do it. We understand that, but it's not allowed. We have a course of action. Here we would have no course of action, yet we would be still required to show that that product meets the same standards, and it doesn't.
So I've got about 12 minutes left and 8 people I need to work through still between the other bill and this one. So if I'm going to ask Representative Young and Tarleton, can you just ask your questions and we'll get the questions offline? You hold? Okay, great. And do you have a question? Okay. Thank you all three for your testimony here today. I look forward to consulting with you as we move this policy forward. Next we have Sally Wolf and Glenn McCullen. You can come up to the dais, please, and when you get seated, please feel free to start. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Glenn McLaughlin, and I I live in the 44th Legislative District. I don't know if any of my representatives are here. I don't recognize you, but I own a business, Eye Doctor Cell Phone and Tablet Repair, that would be directly affected, by this legislation. We do every day repair cell phones, and excuse me, and so we look for every opportunity to make ourselves better every single day, and that's through education, professional development, and try and do this the right way. And having access to OEM parts, having access to OEM training and technical information would only make us better. We currently enjoy, I hate to gloat, but we enjoy a 5-star rating amongst your constituents. And so it's important, if we can make that better, why not? And a bill like this one can only go to support that. In our 5 years, we started in 2011. In our 5 years, we've serviced probably about 30,000 devices. Now that's devices that we don't see in the landfills, in the e-waste recycling. And that's significant for just one repair shop. And I employ 4 people, 3 full-time and 1 part-time. And so better access to parts, technology, and training. If it's about training, bring it on. I'll send my guys in a minute. We invest in technology every single day to make our business better. And I can only see a bill like this bettering that. So that's pretty much all I got right now.
Thank you for your testimony. We'll hold questions until...
My name is Sally Wolf. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I'm on the board of Zero Waste Washington, and we work on behalf of our members to change systems so that fewer items go in the landfill and more of what we think of as trash is recycled, reused, and repaired. As you know, every item that is repaired or recycled instead of thrown away helps preserve natural resources and reduces our exposure to toxic chemicals. But it's gotten a lot harder, in many cases impossible, to repair items that contain microprocessors. That's really why we're asking for your help. We support this bill because it's a fundamental zero waste issue. E-waste is filled with toxic chemicals. The less we can have things end up in the landfill, the less these toxic chemicals are getting into the groundwater and seeping into the water stream. And obviously when things are burned, it gets into the air. It's affecting all of us. You may know this, but if you throw away your cell phone, that was worth about 25 cents. I think it's mostly the gold that's in there, but if you repair that cell phone, it can generate certainly over $40, $50, $60 worth of in local labor, and it keeps the phone out of the waste pile. A recent report found that increasing reuse and refurbishment can reduce the production of emissions of mobile phones. The more we use them, the fewer we have to make, by 3 million tons of CO2. It's just, staggering amounts. I grew up in a family where we never threw anything away that could be repaired, and my father tinkered endlessly. He would really enjoy having a conversation with Representative Young. We repaired things that were broken but not at the end of their useful life. And it's just not that possible today. It's too hard to get past the restrictions, and it's really hard to break into some of this stuff. So the bottom line, you have a microwave, you have a tablet, you have a phone. If you can't get it fixed easily or quickly, you're going to throw it away. And this is crazy. So I encourage you to make it easier for all of us to, as consumers, to get things repaired so that we can lower the harmful impact of our use of these devices and appliances. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Questions? Seeing none, I'm going to ask Bob Battles, if you can come back up to the dais. I'm going to excuse you two from testifying. Okay. Nicole, can you pop up for a second? And Joni Deutsch, if you can come back up too, that would be great. Thank you. We're going to go ahead and ask questions, and I'm going to do a quick consultation here before we get started, so I'll be right back. So what we've decided to do, I looked at the folks because I want to give 2300 a lot of consideration here for the committee. There's 6 people signed in to testify on that bill. They're all people who are with us full time and work for agencies or represent different ports. So we're going to hold the public hearing open on 2300 until our slot tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, so we can hear from those folks here. And if there's a problem with that, please contact staff, because we can maybe hold it till Thursday as well. That timing works better. So instead of trying to squeeze it in the last 5 minutes, I thought we had till noon today, but it turns out we only have till 11:45 because of the state of the state address, and I apologize for that. We have questions. Representative Young, please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Moore. So I appreciate some of the points that you're making about wanting to protect propriety and stuff, but I want to make sure that this discussion is being encapsulated in a way that everybody can really consume. And in one sense, the argument that I feel that you're making kind of fails the test of what we've seen in the past. For example, GM and Chrysler and Ford were making millions and millions of dollars of profit back in the 50s and 60s, all the while providing technical manuals to mechanics, your blue collar garage junkie that could afford to put food on the table for his family, after they just simply get an ASE certification. I have a stepdad for a number of years while I was growing up, and I watched him out of the garage provide for our family. And he had these technical manuals that he could pop the hood of a car, go through these technical manuals, and fix that car for a neighbor or for somebody else. And it's very akin to this very topic. The only difference is that for some reason, our society has gotten under the specter that IT is scary, or that somehow code is something that's beyond us or the average citizen to really look at, when really we should look at it from the standpoint of a car. And in all of those years that I watched my stepdad fix those cars with those manuals published by the manufacturers about how the details of that carburetor or a change here would do there, and then allow him the ability to extrapolate off of that and tinker, it never stopped these companies from making millions and millions of dollars of profit. And so in that light is really how I was asking my question. How is this stopping that from happening?
Well, I would say that with a lot of the companies that I represent, they spend a lot of time and money in bringing in an investment in bringing in people to do exactly what you said, to go through, to hack, to try and find different ways to improve the products, to innovate. And they spend a lot of time and money on that, and proprietary information is then becomes a part of that. And so with something like this, where it's opening it up, to your argument about innovation, and you're right, the innovative sector is based on disruptors. And it's more for my arguments are more about the security and the privacy and the security and what it's opening it up to or could possibly be opening it up to. And I think that's something that we do need to take into consideration when we're having discussions like this. I know that there are other, and I'll be brief, I know that you're short on time. I know that there have been other, bills, Representative Smith, as you alluded to, that have been before this committee that unfortunately we've been on the other side of. And eventually with some of those we were able to get movement on. And I just want to make sure that when we're having this discussion that is not lost in a potential side effect of this legislation.
And unless you have something.
I would echo
new.
those things, and I won't add.
Representative Tarleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both. Thank you for everybody who testified on this. My very specific question, and you may not have the data right now, Mr. Battles, but I would really like to have a sense of, since I'm a total advocate for manufacturing in this state, what % of the digital phones and the digital equipment that we're talking about are actually manufactured in Washington State that would be potentially affected by this legislation? What % of the components of these products are being manufactured in the state? And then the third question, it's more about the structure of the industry. If the manufacturers are concerned about the security and integrity of the way in which the product is supposed to work, do you use authorized service providers only to provide service and maintenance and repair? Is it similar to the auto industry or in the smartphones markets? Do you designate particular industries or particular companies that can service your products?
I think, and I want to kind of also, because we deal with products, both of us could talk about that, but I think I will need to get you those numbers. Absolutely. I do not have those with me. I think it works both ways, but it's the training of those individuals so that they know how to handle this product. They know how to work with this product. If you open it up, while I appreciate the tinkering, I appreciate the innovation, all of those things, the reality is that it's not that person that's going to be using their own phone. This is not the person that's in their home tinkering with their phone. This is the person that's taking other people's phones, tinkering, changing, doing with them, sending them back out with, I still think I've got the same phone. And all of a sudden now, my phone that has been done over here without these kind of safeguards is no longer meets the requirements. Yet it's the manufacturer, it's the seller of the original phone that's going to have to answer for what this phone does, even though somebody else has tinkered with it.
Great. That's going to close the public testimony on 2279. We will keep open the public hearing on House Bill 2300 until our next time slot tomorrow morning. And with that, Ted is adjourned.